morning. Right, yep, so this is about what is the fourth dimension, and as in literally let's quantify it. Let's put it into something meaningful and say this is what it is. So for example, we know obviously first dimension length, second dimension breadth, third dimension depth, fourth dimension, this is what we want to answer. Okay, so in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you, I believe the fourth dimension to be probability, we could say. Or we could say all potentials. Yeah, it's really interesting. So, the reason, see, there's a lot of videos that show our understanding of the fourth dimension by showing us how our understanding of the three dimension works, by showing us our understanding of the two dimension, of the second dimension. So, yeah, we can see that part of the problem is we're limited to trying to understand fourth dimensional realities and higher with our minds and our bodies that exist on a third dimensional realitative plane. I probably made that word up, but what I basically mean by realitative is that it's within reality. It works with reality, physical reality. And my belief is that the fourth dimension works with metaphysical, so non-reality, works with that. I also believe it to be the crossover dimension. So it's the first of the dimensions that uses the metaphysical, or at least what is metaphysical for a third dimension. Anyway, actually, that's probably a really important point. We'll call it metaphysical at this point, but perhaps it simply means the next step up from a third dimension, which is spatial. Because I'm also not including time as a dimension, because it's part of all the dimensions. So yeah, I don't need to talk about that. But yeah. So the fourth dimension is metaphysical, but it's also physical. And here's how that works. The first dimension is a line, well, not even really a line. It's impossible for us to have a one-dimensional object within our three-dimensional space as well. The closest we can get to it is that it's a line, but it's a line with no height and no breadth. So it's a dot, but it's not even. It wouldn't even be a dot, because a dot has height and breadth. So yeah, but imagine that. So here we go. We've got a one-dimensional line, and then to make it two-dimensional, we take another line and so give it another plane. So we have length and we have a width. Then so we see a square, and then to make that 3D, we put another square out from it on the depth plane, and then we connect those two squares with squares along the width and length plane, and then we have a cube. And so then when we want to look at a fourth dimensional version of that, we take cubes from each vertex. I think it's 4 on each vertex, and you have a tesseract. Now the thing is like we can draw tesseracts, and we can create them in 3D space, like on computers, but we have been unable to describe and to visually represent the way that they move. And it's been, the attempts have made it look like it's kind of like, coming in and that in and out. I do think that's how we perceive it in our 3D way of seeing and understanding, but I don't think that's actually how it's functioning. So I believe the fourth dimension to be probability, to be the chance. It basically contains all possibilities for, if we're talking about the cube becoming a tesseract, then it becomes all possibilities of where that tesseract can be, and the physical space that tesseract can be taking up. But, and this is where it's so interesting, I think, is that because the fourth dimension is a crossover from the third dimension, which is physical reality, into the fourth dimension, which is metaphysics, which is probability, so not reality, then what you get is this amalgamation of all the potentials for the tesseract and all the realities for the cubes, what the tesseract is. And so to us it looks like it's always moving and making these weird like cubes coming out of other cubes, and that's exactly what it looks like to us. But its shape in terms of the fourth dimension is that it is all possibilities for that piece, all existing in 4 dimensions, but only coming into the reality of the 3 dimensions as it's perceived. And because we have to look at that with 3-dimensional minds and eyes, then we cannot perceive it in anything more than a reality perception. So we can't see all those possibilities, because to our eyes, possibilities are not things we can see. They're ideas, and we can't yet see ideas. But the fourth dimension can and does. Ideas in terms of the idea that an object can be here or there. If that was true of the object that is in question, that it could indeed be there, then in the fourth dimension, if we were fourth dimensional beings, we would see that. So yeah, it explains how quantum physics works in this dimension, because quantum physics is another crossover point of the third and the fourth dimension of physical and of metaphysical realities. So quantum physics, this is why it's possible for us to say what quantum physics shows, that there are more than one, that there is more than one state for beam and particle, that electrons can be in more than one place, and yet when we come to measure it and put it in terms of physics itself, then those potential states become a reality states, one state, a defined state, and that's what's kind of going on, is that quantum physics is involved in the fourth dimension, but we cannot put constraints of a 3-dimensional world onto a fourth dimensional world, because what we're doing is just simply trying to understand it in our own terms. And although that's possible, it also takes away the reality of the other dimension. It takes away what makes that dimension different from ours, so it just takes it back down to our dimension. So quantum physics, in my opinion, would do well to focus simply on the potential, on the percentage, on the possibilities, because that is, in my opinion, that is the fourth dimension. And it's the idea that those possibilities are real in the fourth dimension. They are real and they are accessible, all of them, all the time. So we could take it, whereas if we were to take a possibility here in the third dimension, and it would most likely eradicate all other possibilities because we've chosen or activated or chanced upon that version of a reality. In the fourth dimension, it doesn't matter. We can take as many possibilities as we want and we can bring them into the light, and it doesn't stop the access to other possibilities or the percentage chance of those abilities happening. It doesn't increase or decrease at all. And it has none of the rules of our third dimension. So our third dimensional rules with regards to probabilities are the probability that something happens once is equal to all the other probabilities of that event having an outcome. If we take all things fair, it's a fair experiment. But then what happens is once an outcome has happened, for that exact same outcome to happen again, the chances of that diminish with each addition to that stack. In the fourth dimension, that doesn't happen. In the fourth dimension, it's always equal chance of all possibilities happening at any time. It's only limited in our third dimension by how many possibilities we can view, which is why we can't see a tesseract, or why when we imagine it, it looks like it's coming out of itself and going round and round and spinning and expanding and contracting. Well, it's not. It's simply we can't view all the possibilities at once. Fourth dimension can. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think for now, hopefully that's made it somewhat clear. Because for a long time I wanted a video. I wanted the knowledge of what the fourth dimension is, and now I believe that's it. It is potential. It is probability. It is all possibilities. And then so just had a thought, like, if the fourth dimension is a crossover point of reality and meta and non-reality, metaphysics, I don't know why that word's gone out of my head. Anyway, if that's what it is, then science says that there are an infinite number of other dimensions. Now, that doesn't sit well with me, an infinite number of other dimensions. Well, I think what makes more sense to me is that there are dimensions that are comprised of infinity, or there is a dimension that is infinite, and the other dimensions kind of are within that. I don't know, because I'm thinking, so as I say, if the fourth dimension goes from the physical to the metaphysical, got the word back, then I believe that the fifth would just incorporate metaphysical. So, whereas we can picture a fourth dimension in the third dimension, and we can experiment with it in quantum physics, I don't think the fifth dimension would have any relation to this dimension at all. I don't think it would be physical in the slightest. I think it would be completely in the realms of metaphysical. And so if we're looking at the fourth dimension as being linked, the link between the metaphysical and the physical by being the potential of all physical things, then the fifth dimension, I believe, would be all non-physical things, no bearing on physical reality at all. So it could well be the space between all possible positions of physical matter in the universe, which might well be classed as antimatter. So the fifth dimension might be linked with black holes and things like that. Yeah, I think that's a solid premise, but maybe I'll explore that later. Thanks for listening, and yeah, I really hope to have stimulated your mind, and stimulate mine back, please.